everyone, it's Leanne. Welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. I hope everyone is in a festive holiday spirit. I am, and I have a holiday card to share with you. I created this using some of my favorite holiday stamps from Lawn Fawn. So let's get started. I have an A2 size folded card, and then I have a piece of mixed media cardstock cut down about a ½ inch off the height and width. These are the two stamp sets I'm using from Lawn Fawn. I have Frosty Fairy Friends and Merry Messages for the sentiment. I have some ink pads. I grabbed my VersaFine in Onyx Black, and then I have a Versamark for embossing, and then Memento Tuxedo Black ink for stamping with Copics. I'm going to be using some embossing powder. I have Snow from Recollections, my favorite right now, and I'm going to use my black Copic marker, and I'll show you what we're going to do with this soon in the video. I have a neat trick for you. And so I'm going to start with the mixed media cardstock. I want to do mostly a single layer stamping, and so I'm going to use the fairy here. And so what I've done is I've stamped out a sample fairy to use as guidance for placement of my background. And then this is the sentiment I'm going to use, have yourself a merry little Christmas. And so I have a sample of that as well. So I'm using this just to block out the space so that I can create that single layer background. So I'm tacking this down with some Post-it tape, just so it doesn't shift around when I'm stamping. And I'm going to use some stamps here. I'm going to use the present, the mushroom, and the berry branch. I really like that one there. And then I'm going to put in some snowflakes as well. And so I'm going to start with the biggest stamp first. So that's the berry branch. And so when I'm laying this out, I want all of the items that I stamped down on this single layer to be evenly spaced. And so I'm going to start with the biggest item first, because that way it'll help me block out the space better. So because I plan on Copic coloring this, I'm going to use Memento Tuxedo Black ink. It is a fast drying ink and it works well with the Copic markers. I had pulled out my VersaFine stamp pad, and I love that stamp pad. I used it in the last video and I haven't used it in a very long time, and I just loved how crisp the lines were. I find that the Memento one just has a little bit of a bleed to it, but it does dry really fast where the VersaFine doesn't, so I opted to just go with the Memento, which is also good too. So I'm slowly working down in the element sizes, and you can see the positioning and where I'm kind of stamping everything. And I have some things bleeding off the edge. I want this to feel like it's bigger than just the card, so that background, the stamps sometimes hang off the edge, and I just put a piece of paper underneath to catch the overhang when I stamped. And so now I'm going to stamp my fairy out, and she's ready. Now I'm going to show you how I create this. Normally I would use a black piece of paper. The paper I have is kind of thin though, and I'm not crazy about it, so I decided to use the cardstock that I use to create my cards, or this is Nina, and use my black Copic marker that I never use for anything else and put it to use. So this kind of just popped in my head. I wanted to do a black background sentiment, and I knew I didn't have very good paper. And I have this beautiful Copic marker sitting here. And the best thing about Copic markers is that they blend really nicely even into themselves, so you don't get streaking. And if you're going to see streaking with a marker, it's definitely going to be on a black or a dark color. And so I did test this out to make sure it would work, but I'm not sure why I had doubts, because as you can see, it lays down beautifully, and you can't see the lines. When it dries, it just looks like black paper. And you're not getting like 100% black, but it is very close. And I love that it's that cardstock, and so it's got nice weight to it. And so that's what I did to make my black background for my sentiment. So I'm coming in with some kitchen flour and my brush just to take off any stickiness, or make sure things don't stick where I don't want them, or stick where I don't want them with my embossing here. So I have that inked up with the Versamark ink pad, and then I'm going to put some embossing powder over top of this. I have a paper underneath of my work here to catch all of the embossing powder as well, so I'm not just dumping this on my desk. It kind of looks like I am, but I'm not. And so I'm just tapping that off. And then I'm going to come in with my mop brush and just brush off the edges of any where my hands might have been around the edges and caught some of that embossing powder. And throw this under my heat gun. So you can see here it's embossed and it looks really good. I'm really happy with the result. And for something quick, needing a piece of black paper in a pinch. I'm so happy that I tried this and it worked. And I thought it looked really neat in the end. So I'm just trimming down the sides with my Fiskars paper trimmer and making sure that it is the right size for my card. So now I'm going to pick out some Copic markers. I have a list, and I'm going to pick out some colors for coloring. So I have my markers all picked out, and I'll put those on the screen so you can see the colors that I'm using first for the fairy. Now, finding red was really challenging for me. I went through a whole bunch of swatches and I settled on something that I ended up really loving, but it took me a bit to get there. So I had normally would pick R29, and I had started with that. But I found that R29 was more yellow red than cranberry red. I really wanted something rich and kind of on the cool side. And so the way that I counteracted that was coming in with some RV29 red violet and using that as my first shadow, and then really beefing up those shadows in the red with RV66, which is like not even really red. It looks like a deep purple, like a crimson-y, maybe not even crimson, probably like a cranberry plum. But yeah, it really worked well for the red that I wanted to achieve. So that's the color combination I used in the red parts of all of the parts of my card that are red. For the fairy hair, I wanted to do something fun and whimsical and different. So I came in with purple, laying down a base of BV00 and using BV02 as my shadow. And then also adding V06 in there too. And so for the green, I'm using a combination of YG11, G02, and G16, but I don't actually use that here. That's in the next step. So for the wings, I just put down the YG11 to give a light wash of the base green, the lightest color I had. So now I'm ready to color the card. I'll show you how I color the berry branches first. So this is using the same red combo from the fairy. I have R29 as the base, and then RV29 is my first pass of a shadow, and then RV66 just to heighten those shadows, make them really deep and rich. And those two secondary and third colors are what gives it that really pretty red. And so to keep this fun and keep the color palette pretty simple and in the same color family as everything else, I'm going to use green to color the branches. Normally, I guess in winter it'd probably be brown, but I wanted to keep this pretty lively looking. So this is coming in with a wash of YG11 and then bringing G02 in as my first shadow, and then G16 just to deepen the richest, tiniest part of the shadow, like that deepest part where they connect. And then the snowflakes are using the purple set as well, the same purples as from the fairy hair. I'm doing a base of purple BV00 and then coming in with BV02 to work from the center out. So I want my deepest part to be in the center and then just wisping out the marker from there. And then the mushroom being red, there's something about mushrooms being red, and I don't know if it's because I played Super Mario Brothers as a kid and all the mushrooms were red, or maybe it's just, I don't know, maybe it's just folk art or something, like something that's been existent forever. But I always love coloring these mushrooms in red. They're so pretty. And so the presents will be a combination of these colors as well. So green and purple for these. So I want to keep everything within the same color palette. They may not all be true colors to real life, but they match, and I like that. So I wanted to elevate this background a little bit. So I'm coming in with some blue, which is a nice complement to the colors that I already have in my palette, just to kind of make it pop a little bit more. So I'm bringing in B00. It's not the lightest Copic in the blue family. It's got a little visual weight to it, and so what I'm needing to do to feather at that edge is bring in my Zero, my colorless blender, just to weaken the edges where it blends into the background, into that white paper. So I'm working my way around the edge and laying down flicks of blue in from the edge And then coming in with the colorless blender to soften the edges where it lightens off the paper. And then coming in once again with that B00 just to reapply everything. And I find when you put the colorless blender down on the paper, then the paper becomes wet, and when you put down the blue a second time, it blends better with that 0 and just makes it a little more weak on the edges, so you're not getting strokes or strong lines that you can see. So now I'm going to run my fairy through my Copic, or my Sizzix Big Shot. So I'm just using some Post-it tape to tack down the waffle die, and I'll quickly zip that through and punch that out. So I have that done now, super easy and quick. And so I'm ready to start building the card. I have the background all colored. And so before I do, I found that the fairy wings were a little light and were getting lost in the background. So I came in with that B00 that I used in the base background and brought that in on the ends of her wings, and then reapplied the YG11 just to make the wings a little bit darker. So now it's all ready. So I'm going to use Post-it tape to put my fairy on and my sentiment, my favorite, just to help those focal points elevate off the background a little bit. One thing I wanted to mention for the white parts, the snow on the mushroom and the muff for the fairy, I had tried using Warm 1, W1, and then Neutral 2, and then Neutral 1, I believe it was, or Neutral 0. Just trying to work at those grays. I found that the lighter gray was probably the best to use just to give a little shadow if you did want to do that on the snow parts and the white parts. So I'm going to attach the full background now that it's assembled with foam tape as well to my background of my card, and I'm leaving the border white. I really like that light look, and I think it just complements and frames it really nicely. So positioning that into place and then just pushing it down. So as a last touch, I'm coming in with my Wink of Stella brush pen in clear glitter and putting some glitter on the snow parts and on the snowflakes as well. Just little touches here and there. So you can see as I hold it to the light, you can catch a little bit of that glitter, especially on the tops of that mushroom, those mushroom caps. So this is my completed holiday card, my Christmas card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you're notified as I post more videos. Thank you so much for watching. Happy holidays!